Okay, I know. We all know Trump went on TV today and announced he's going to kill all crime in DC with federal troops. He's going to send in the federal troops to kill all the crime. But I have proof, and I feel like I should apologize in advance, although I'm not sure how it's going to go. But I have a feeling this video is going to go a little longer than usual, and I apologize for that. I know nobody wants to hear me drone on and on for more than a few minutes. I mean, I talk to my family. They tell me regularly, so I do know. But this is pretty important. What happened today, and I kind of have a lot to say about it that I think some will be helpful and insightful. Hopefully, the bottom line is I have proof, and it's in his words. I have proof that this isn't about crime at all. And I'm not just speculating, it's actual proof. And the proof isn't because I listened to some liberal commentator in the media who told me that that's what they think. No, I don't take, that's not how I form my opinions. This proof comes straight from Trump's own mouth, as well as the pages of history. Now, listen how this all ties together. Trump himself said that he's going to take these tactics to democratic cities only, these federalizing of the troops well, not federalizing of the troops. He's going to do that in DC, but in other cities, he's going to send troops in. And this is what he said today. He said, this is just the start. And then he listed off a slew of democratic cities that he thought had the similar problems. He said, we're going to go take care of them all. So in essence, he said, this is the start, and this is not going to be the last. And that makes it hugely problematic and hugely important, which is why I'm going to devote a little more time to it tonight. But, not a single Republican city was mentioned on his list of cities that have dangerous crime rates. Okay, so you may say, well, that's not proof. That's not proof. Maybe those cities have horrific crime rates. All right, fair point. But the fact is, these Republican cities don't have the worst crime rates in the country. In fact, three of the most crime-ridden cities of all are deep, not just on the periphery, but deep inside MAGA territory. They're all in red states. And the president didn't say a single word about any of them. So if this is about crime, why is it only about crime in democratic cities? And why does it overlook the horrific crime rates in staunch red Republican cities? Now, if that's not proof that he's not concerned about crime, but about something else entirely, I don't know what is. And I mean, of course, I know if you're MAGA, you'll be questioning these numbers. You'll be asking questions like, well, how do we know which cities have the worst crime rates and which cities don't? Well, if we can't go by the numbers, then I'll ask you, if we can't trust any of the numbers, as the president suggested today we can't, then how do we know the crime rate in DC is sky high? And how do we know it's bad in democratic cities all across the country? And how do we know it's supposedly not bad in Republican cities? Maybe it's terrible there. Maybe the numbers there are wrong, right? Listen, we can get to those answers. I think we can get to some of these answers from the pages of history, from Trump's own words today and the pages of history. And because here's why this is literally Dictator 101. And it's a well documented strategy where a leader can do any number of variations on the following tactics. Listen to this. This comes from history. They can manufacture or exaggerate a crisis where the problem doesn't even need to be real. It can be entirely made up, or it can be an issue that's magnified until it looks existential. Classic examples: foreign enemies within, mass unrest, election fraud. Things always turn out to be exaggerated or invented. Or they can amplify public fears through propaganda, official statements, and media allies. The leader repeatedly, over and over again, tells the public that they are in immediate and horrible danger, or that the very foundations of their democratic system are in danger. Now, have you ever heard, do you know of any leader in recent American history who repeats things a lot? Like, I mean, a lot. Repeats things over and over. This is horrible. That's horrible. It was election fraud. Election was stolen. Russia, Russia, Russia. Hoax, hoax, hoax. Everything's a hoax, right? Repetition is important, and this is Dictator 101. The goal is to bypass rational debate and push people into an emotional survival mode mindset where they're more willing to give up freedoms for the sake of security. And I will tell you, I feel kind of blessed by YouTube in that sometimes they push my channel out to a lot of MAGA people who I don't normally get to talk to, and I think are not normally exposed to views from my side, which is that as a lifelong conservative and a Christian, and someone who's still a conservative and still a Christian, but I can't go along with any of this because I don't want a dictatorship in our country. That's what Republicans have fought all of our lives against is dictatorship. Okay. So the arguments though that they typically leave on my videos, on the videos that get enough views to get comments, most of them don't, but some of them do. And I get a lot of comments from MAGA people and they're so emotional. All their responses are emotional. They're angry, they're upset, and it's name calling. They call me stupid, call me an idiot, call me a liberal. "Oh, I'm a liberal. Oh no." Like that's the worst thing that could happen. But that's typically very typical. That's what the leader wants to play on is or those emotions that stop rational debate and stop rational conversation. I want to bring some of that rational conversation back. And if you're MAGA and you support all of this, please, I ask you to listen to me with an open mind. I listened to Trump today with an open mind. And the first pass, I thought, yeah, maybe, I mean, it is a problem, crime in DC. Maybe he can get it under control. But, as I started thinking about history and the tactics that budding dictators use to take full power as an authoritarian leader, I couldn't help but see all over this talk he gave today, the clues and the signs and the breadcrumbs of this is a budding dictatorship, and we're in the first steps of it. No, we're not in the first steps. I'll say we're in the second steps because the first steps took place during the last 6 months. But here's another important tactic that they use, which is to make the crisis seem big enough and alarming enough to justify extreme measures. That's what he's done with the elections. That's what he's done with immigration. And that's what he's doing now with crime in DC and crime in democratic cities around the country. Not the whole country, but in the Democrat parts of the country. Uh, that's one sign that he's not telling the truth, and that's one sign that it's not about crime, because crime is equally bad and worse in a lot of Republican areas. None of them got mentioned. Even the cities that are much worse didn't get mentioned. So, you can see this in what he does. It's not enough to claim that there's a little trouble. No, the imaginary crisis has to be framed as catastrophic, something so serious that normal political or law enforcement responses just won't cut it. And this paves the way to argue that only military force, emergency powers, or suspension of rights can solve it. Does this sound familiar? Anybody heard about the use of military force recently in our country? And no, I don't mean overseas. I mean here in our country. And is that kind of unprecedented? Like it's happened very few times in our history, and it hasn't happened at all in the living history of millions of people alive today. Anyway, if you don't believe that that's exactly what's happening here and now, then just ask yourself this. Why has Trump made military intervention the solution to all these crises that he keeps coming up with? He's made military intervention the solution to protests, to peaceful protests in Los Angeles. They started off as peaceful until the military showed up. But they showed up before anything got out of control, claiming that things were already out of control. So it's a solution. The use of the military is the solution that he's using to the made up crisis of hordes of immigrants destroying our nation with waves of crime. Constantly, over and over, he goes on and on about the waves of crime that the immigrants are creating. And it's wholly untrue, completely fabricated. Yeah, immigrants commit crimes. About 3% of them commit crimes, serious crimes. I think something like 7% commit any crimes like misdemeanors. And that goes from like speeding, going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, to serious things like murder and rape and all that. So, but he makes it sound like all the immigrants are doing these things, and he's called the military in to deport people who were here legally and who've committed no serious or violent crimes, because there's not enough immigrants who've committed serious crimes to get anywhere close to 3,000 a day. You could barely even get to 300 a day with those people. So he's arresting anybody in sight, anybody who has like even a modicum of a claim to having ever committed a crime, and including misdemeanors, and he's taking them out. But he's using the military to do it. That's the point. The budding dictator will always come up with an excuse, a rationale, and a crisis to claim that military force is necessary. And now military force is the answer to another fabricated crisis, the crisis of crime, but only in democratic cities, which is evidence of something. You got to think about it, use your head. A lot of us, back when Bush invaded Iraq, had a suspicion that it wasn't because of WMD, weapons of mass destruction. And turns out it looks like that may have been right for the most part. So don't be naive. If you were taken then, don't get taken again, because this time the stakes are far higher. If he went into Iraq to get rid of Saddam Hussein, that's not going to bring a dictatorship to our country. All right. But what this president is doing absolutely will. He's right on track to do that. And our budding authoritarian leader is using these crises of, immigration, crime, election fraud. He's using all of that to normalize authoritarian control. And once the public accepts that only the strong hand of the leader can restore order, the regime keeps those powers indefinitely. Once they got it, they keep it. And by the time people realize the crisis was exaggerated or fabricated, the authoritarian structures are already entrenched. And that's when we will have to say it's too late. And we're getting mighty close to that. And that's the main thing I wanted to say. I feel like that could be the end of this video. But for those of you who are skeptical and think I haven't proven my point yet, which I haven't yet, actually, stick around a few more minutes. Let me see how many minutes I've gone so far. Well, this clock never works. Okay, I've already gone too long, and I apologize for that. But if you want to know, if you want the evidence that I'm going to get to, that actually proves the claims that I've just made, stick around for a few minutes. And I'm going to play from his talk today, or by the time this video gets uploaded, it'll be yesterday. And I'm going to play video from his talk today, the things he said, to prove in his own words that everything I've just said is exactly what's going on. Let's take a listen. Hold on just a second. Sorry about that.
And we're here for a very serious purpose, Something's out of control, but we're going to.
Now watch, he's going to do what I said budding dictators do. He's going to tell you it's the worst thing that's ever happened.
I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor.
Bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor. He's going to save the nation's capital from this horrific, horrific stuff.
And worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that.
All right, so that's his announcement. That's what he's going to do. Place D.C. under direct federal control, which he actually has the right to do under the Constitution. It's at his discretion. But I don't think we're going to like where he's going to with this.
I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly.
Now, when he says a law enforcement agency is going to be allowed to do their job properly, he means he's going to allow them to violate the Constitution because he feels the Constitution holds law enforcement back from doing the job properly. Really bad stuff. Really bad stuff. You may think, well, that's what we need to do to clamp down on crime, but that's also what will destroy us as a free democracy and a capitalist nation. Everything we've had, we're going to lose. And you may never admit it to yourself. There are people today, well, maybe not so much today, but a few years ago, there were still people alive who lived under Hitler who were true believers. They were like MAGA Hitler. And to the day they died, they still believed Hitler had done no wrong. So you may end up like that. We'll be under a dictatorship for the next 30 years, and you'll be like, yeah, well, it's all good. Had to do it. But that's what's going to happen. Look, the evidence is ICE has violated the constitutional rights of thousands of people, and the administration has gone to court to defend it and to argue in their favor and to say they did nothing wrong. So that's how I know. That's how I know. I'm not making it up. This is no longer speculation. It's not like during the election when we could say, well, I think he'll do this, when I did say I thought he would do exactly this. And people could say, well, he's not going to do that. And he said, okay, well, we don't know because he's not president right now. Well, now he is, and he's been there for nearly 8 months. And this, he's right on track to do all these things that we said he would do.
Our capital city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth, drugged out maniacs and homeless people. And we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're not going to take it.
There you go. Exactly what I said, right out of the Dictator's Handbook, right there. Just it's the most horrible thing is these criminals, roving our streets and killing people and murdering people and doing drugs and all kinds of terrible things. And we're not going to take it anymore. And we're going to stop it. I'm the man. I'm the only man who can stop it. That's what dictators do. That's how they take power. That's how they, start to turn a democracy into a dictatorship.
Murders in 2023 reached the highest rate probably ever. They say 25 years, but they don't know what that means because it just goes back 25 years. Can't be worse.
Okay, let's just take a quick listen to that one more time because it gets these numbers all wrong.
Murders in 2023 reached the highest rate probably ever. They say 25 years, but they don't know what that means because it just goes back 25 years. Can't.
Okay, so look, I'm going to give him credit. No one could say that I always say he's wrong. He told the truth here, and he was accurate when he said murders in 2023 reached a very high rate in D.C. That is absolutely right. Of course, he picked 2023 a bit selectively because we do have 2024 that has come between then and now, and we're now 8 months into 2025, so the figures have long been out for 2024 for D.C. for the murder rate. And they showed a great improvement in 2024. So no wonder he didn't use those numbers. But in 2023, it was very high. According to the Metropolitan Police Department, the DC Police, there were 187 homicides in 2024, which represented a 32% drop from the 274 homicides in 2023. That's 28 per one. Now, listen to these numbers because he's going to give a bunch of numbers. That's 28 murders per 100,000 residents in 2024, okay, which is above the 2023 average of 6.9 for national average. So it's well above the national average, but it's by far not the worst city in the country. The murder capital of the country is in the deepest red state in the country. And I'll tell you what it is in a minute. But so DC has 28 murders per 100,000 residents, and that's significantly down from their rate of 40 per 100,000 in 2023. I think he said 41. Some numbers say 40, some say 42. But anyway, it's in that range, around 40. And so he got that right. He was accurate, and he did say it was from 2023. So I give him credit for that, okay? I'm not trying to bash him on every little thing. But yeah, so I mean, why is he choosing 2023? Why do you think? And what do you think he's going to say in a minute about choosing 2023? He's going to say that the 2024 numbers are not up, that they're down, but they got reported wrong. And he's going to sick Pam Bondi on the person who came up with the 2024 numbers, which is crazy. She's going to find that he committed a crime. And that's what the Justice Department is going to be spending its time on instead of fighting real actual crime. They're looking for made up crimes. All right. So let's go on.
Yeah, just like we did on our southern border. Nobody comes through our southern border anymore. 3 months in a row, we had zero. I don't know if that's right, but the people that do the work, it's a very liberal group of people, actually, and they actually said zero for the last 3 months. Nobody thought a thing like that was possible.
There's something I never thought was possible either, that he would take the word of a group of liberals who came up with some numbers. Notice what he said here. And my point here is a little different than the main point of this whole thing. But he actually believes the numbers about the border that came out saying zero people have crossed the border illegally since he's been in office, something like that. And he said it comes from a liberal group. So he's admitting that liberal groups tell the truth on numbers when he likes the number. When he doesn't like the number, he fires the person, BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, come to mind, who came up with the numbers, and now he's going to sick Pam Bondi on the person who came up with the lower murder figures in 2024 for DC, and find out, try to pin some kind of crime on that poor person. Can you imagine doing your job as a public servant, and now your own government is going to try to make up a crime that they can pin on you because they don't like the numbers you came out with for your job? I'm telling you, in this administration, you get fired, you get punished for telling the truth. It's really bad stuff going on.
If you wrote correctly, you'd see, look at the kind of numbers we have. DC, 41 per 100,000, number one that we can find anywhere in the world. Other cities are pretty bad, but they're not as bad as that.
I got to play this again. Listen to what he says. So he gives the honest number, the 40, 41 per 100,000. But then listen what he says. He says it's number one in the world. He says Washington, D.C. has the worst murder rate of any city in the world.
That we can find anywhere in the world. Other cities are pretty bad, but they're not as bad as that.
Look at that. Not as bad as that, right? Now look at this. Let's see if it's not as bad as that. Here, global murder rates, the highest homicide rates in the world. Colima, Mexico, has a rate of 181.9 homicides per 100,000 population. Washington, D.C. last year had 28 homicides per 100,000. It's not anywhere close to the worst. Then, okay, go down here. Zamora, Mexico, Tijuana, Mexico, Fresnillo, Mexico, Celaya, Mexico, Cancun. And look what is after Mexico. What do we have down here? Look at that. Lo and behold, Jackson, Mississippi is the murder capital of the United States, and it comes from the most hardcore MAGA, dyed-in-the-wool, red Republican state in the whole nation. Jackson, Mississippi is the murder capital of the United States. Do you think you will hear the president even mention the name of this city today when he's talking about how we got to get rid of all the crime and all the murder and we're not going to take it anymore and he's the man to get rid of it? No, he does not. And why not? If crime were truly what he was interested in, he would have mentioned Jackson, Mississippi first. But crime's not what he's interested in. It's not what he's interested in at all. Now, look at this. He's going to talk about this in a minute. Dramatic decline in violent crime. Okay, we have two different types of numbers here. We have the numbers of murders, and then we have numbers for just violent crimes, excluding murders. Now we're going to talk about the violent crimes, excluding murders in Washington, D.C. 2024 was a standout year. Total violent crime dropped 35% from 2023. which brings it to the lowest level in over 30 years. Homicides are down 32%, robberies down 39%, armed carjackings 53% down, and assaults with dangerous weapons down 27%. Through mid 2025, violent crime is 26% lower, with juvenile arrests down 20%, including carjackings. Now, he's going to tell you in a minute that all this is up. All these crimes are up. But here's the weird thing. The first 5 months of 2025, violent crime was down 22% compared to the same period last year. Now, if the guy they're about to accuse of a crime who came up with these numbers during the Biden administration last year in 2024, he said crime was down in DC, but he also said, whoever he is, or she, maybe, I don't know, but whoever they are, they also said crime was down 22% in the first 5 months of this year. And who was president during those 5 months? This guy. So why doesn't he just embrace these numbers and say, look, it's continued to go down. I've gotten it down even lower than Joe Biden got it. It's nothing he did that brought these numbers down. And, little Joe Biden did to bring them down either. The mayor and the city council and everything, the police force of the police department of DC, they did that for the most part. But, if you're going to take credit for every good thing that happens while you're in office, then take credit for this. Don't demean the guy who came up with these numbers because he set them in your favor too. If he was biased and came up with fake good numbers for Biden, then why didn't he come up with fake bad numbers for you? Because he's not biased. He's not faking. I'm sure he has an opinion on which president he likes the best or which president he would prefer, but that opinion does nothing to change the numbers. However they get the numbers, look, somebody calls into the police department and says somebody got shot, then you take that report, you count how many reports that came into the police that said somebody got shot, and you say this many people got shot so far this year. It doesn't matter who you like for president. If you're honest, you come up with honest numbers. Now, they're going to charge this guy with being dishonest about the numbers and try to pin some crime on him. But then how are they going to explain that he showed better numbers even under Trump? That's not bias. That's someone who's doing an honest job and doesn't let his personal opinions interfere with the results of his work. That's the way it's supposed to be done, right? Hey, okay. Let me bring up one more image. This is Jackson, Mississippi. It holds the title of murder capital of the U.S. with the highest homicide rate per capita among major cities. In 2024, Jackson recorded 111 homicides, resulting in a rate of 77.2 per 100,000 residents. Still the highest in the nation. Now, one other thing, that rate is nearly double the rate of DC. The murder rate in Jackson, Mississippi is nearly double the rate of DC. Now, if Trump wanted to be a hero, go into Jackson, Mississippi. It's a much smaller town. Everybody there's a Republican. They'll embrace you. They'll welcome you there. And you'll probably be able to show some results for your efforts. Now, check this out. What are the other two top cities in the United States that are also far above DC? St. Louis, which previously led the nation with a 53.9 per 100,000 murder rate. St. Louis is in what state? Yeah, Missouri. Red, dyed in the wool red, very Republican, very, very MAGA, very MAGA. New Orleans, another Republican state. Louisiana, which had ranked number one in earlier reports and reports a rate of 53.8 per 100,000 in 2023. And it, like DC, it dropped significantly in 2024. I'm willing to admit that. I can say, hey, there's a Republican state where the murder rate in its biggest city dropped last year. I don't mind admitting that. I'm not saying that whoever came up with the numbers there is lying because they're biased and they want to support Republicans. I'm not saying that. I have no evidence to believe that. I have no reason to believe that at all. So let's see what he says next.
Juvenile offenders and crimes against.
Yeah, I am playing this because I just read those numbers that they're all down in DC for juvenile defenders or offenders. Okay, those are all the numbers in all the crime categories for DC for 2024 are down significantly by all of them by 20% or more.
Juvenile offenders and crimes against persons, as they say. It's getting worse. Not getting better, it's getting worse.
Okay, just ask yourself, why is he lying here? Why is he saying it's getting worse when it is in fact getting better? And he explicitly says it's not getting better, it's getting worse. But the numbers say it's getting better, not worse. And why would he have to tell that lie? Because he wants to send troops in. Because he has another agenda. And it's not about crime at all. If it was about crime, he would say, hey, DC, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. What can we do as the federal government to help? It's not what he's saying. He wants to get the country used to the fact that federal troops are going to be around us everywhere. He wants us to get used to them being around. And he's only going to be sending them at first to Democratic cities. So those of you in MAGA areas can rest assured for a while. I guess you can breathe easy and say, well, I don't have to worry about it. It's not going to affect me. Just like when they arrest immigrants and haul them off, even though they've done nothing wrong, it doesn't affect you. So you don't care, right? Believe me, eventually it'll come for you. Look how the people high up in the administration tear each other apart. It'll come for you. Don't worry. It's coming. Don't worry.
And we had a recent indication. There was a story about a man who was just left. He quit because he was asked to do phony numbers on crime. And we're going to look into that. I think Pam is going to be looking into that. But
he's talking about he's calling the numbers for DC for 2024 phony.
He was asked by the city, I guess, that we don't want to show the real numbers. Let me do numbers so it looks like it's going down. Not going down.
Wow. Amazing. Just make stuff up. Just make stuff up.
And under Biden, it was a disaster. And nobody did anything about it. We're going to do things about it like you wouldn't believe.
Okay, how do we know it was a disaster under Biden, especially in 2023? How do we know that? Because we have the numbers. The same agency, I don't know who puts out these numbers for DC, but whoever does it has done it the same for all of these years. And whoever did it under Biden in 2023 said, it wasn't great. It was terrible. DC had a terrible murder rate in 2023, a terrible crime rate. And they admitted it. They put it out there. Then in 2024, they said things turned around. Well, why does he think they faked the numbers in 2024 but not in 2023? And if they told the truth in 2023 when it went against the people, Biden, the Democrats, who he thinks the people who do the numbers support, maybe they do, maybe they don't, I don't know. But more than likely they do, then why would they come out with numbers in 2023 that could possibly make Biden look bad or make Democrats look bad? Why would they do that? And why would they turn it around in 2024 and fake it if they didn't fake it in 2023? None of this makes sense. There's absolutely no evidence for what he's saying. He has not a shred of evidence for making that claim. None, zero. But he's going to trash the numbers because he don't like them. And if you don't like them, you can just trash them. You can say they're made up, say they're fake. Just look, guys, if you're a MAGA person who supports all this, seriously, we're adults here, right? How you can't keep buying into this. You must have seen a pattern over time that whenever a number is to his liking, he says it's credible. And whenever it's not to his liking, he says it's fake. Come on. I know you know. We all know you know. Just admit it.
We have other cities also that are bad, very bad. You look at Chicago,
Democrat.
how bad it is. You look at Los Angeles, how bad it is.
Democrat.
We have other cities that are very bad. New York has a problem.
Democrat.
And then you have, of course, Baltimore and Oakland.
Democrat.
And we
Oakland, Democrat.
don't even mention that anymore. They're so far gone.
They're so far gone, really. Jackson, Mississippi, top crime rate or top murder rate in the nation. St. Louis follows second. And what was the other place? Yeah, I forgot. What was that other city? Here it is. Oh, no, not there. Where is that? Oh, yeah, New Orleans. Couldn't think of that. And New Orleans, all Republican cities, or Republican states anyway. And not a mention there. No mention here. He mentioned all these Democratic cities. Amazing, right? Hold on.
We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to lose our cities over this. And this will go further. We're starting very strongly with DC, and we're going to clean it up real quick, very quickly, as they say.
Yeah, see what he said? We're starting with DC, and we're going to clean it up very quickly. Starting, that's the starting point. That's not where it's going to end. And I have demonstrated that this is not about crime by the fact that he says numbers he doesn't like are fake, but numbers he likes are credible, even when they come from a liberal group, as he said earlier. And he's he's all over the place. He's just making stuff up. He's saying the crime rate in 2024 was down, not up. Doesn't offer a shred of evidence for that. Says the guy who came up with the numbers saying they were up, or sorry, the crime was better off in 2024. Says he made it up. Not a shred of evidence. He's the one making it up. And it's hard to understand how anybody can say with a straight face that they support any of this. Now, look, this was the main thing I wanted to get to. And this is going to be my longest video ever. But it's really important because we're at a really critical time right now. I put together this chart of dictators and how they came to office and what crisis they manufactured or exaggerated and how they fear-mongered, what their fear messaging was. And then I talk about the extraordinary measures they took and then the outcome. This is very, very brief. This doesn't go into any detail, but it is all accurate. Look at this. I'll just go through it very briefly. Hitler manufactured the Reichstag fire, blamed it on the communists, claimed that Germany was under immediate threat from a communist revolution. Who claims that we're under threat by communists all the time here? They call the Democrats communists. Who is it? I can't think of the guy's name. Anyway, but I think you've heard that before, right? All right, extraordinary measures taken in Germany passed the Reichstag fire decree, which suspended civil liberties. And the outcome was consolidated power and opposition parties were crushed. Benito Mussolini from Italy claimed Italy faced chaos from socialist uprisings and labor unrest. He framed himself as the only leader who could prevent Italy from falling into anarchy. He used paramilitary black shirts, which I would say might be the equivalent of today's group we call ICE. And he passed emergency laws to suppress opposition. He transitioned Italy into a one-party fascist state. I'm going to put this on the screen for a bit so you can take a screenshot if you want to look at it later or pause it or whatever. But yeah, so I'll leave it full screen for a little bit. Vladimir Putin, Russia, 1999. Apartment bombings blamed on Chechen terrorists, later suspected to be FSB false flag. That's their CIA. What do they call that group? Oh, my mind's going blank. Russia, the group, the spies, whatever. The KGB. Yeah, that's it. The FSB is today's version of the KGB. All right, the fear messaging from Putin was he portrayed Russia as under attack by extremists who would destroy the country. And the extraordinary measures he launched were a second Chechen war, and he expanded the powers of the FSB. He cemented public support for his presidency and weakened dissent. So, look, Dictators can come to power initially through public support. They can be popular. They can be elected in a fair and free election. The fact they're elected in a fair and free election doesn't mean they can't become a dictator later. Our president today has shown every sign for months now that he is on that track. Many of us said before the election, and even before the, 20, I didn't say it so much before 2016, but after I saw him in office for a few years, I started thinking, oh, he's a wannabe dictator. And now there's so much evidence that is pretty much undeniable now for anyone who knows anything about the history of the 20th century dictators. Ferdinand Marcos, you remember him, the Philippines, 1972, claimed communist insurgency posed an existential threat. Oh gosh, that's starting to sound so familiar again. Communist existential threat. I can't think where I've heard it, but yeah, it's out there. I know it's in the air. Anyway, Marcos warned that the Philippines would collapse into chaos without decisive action. Ooh, that's sounding familiar too. It has a familiar feel to it, you know. He declared martial law. He suspended habeas corpus, one of the fundamental protections we have in free societies from our government, from government overreach and abuse. He extended his rule by a decade, and he arrested political opponents. All right, one more. Wait till I get to Francisco Franco of Spain. That's pretty amazing. Okay, Augusto Pinochet of Chile. He exaggerated the threat of socialist revolution under Salvador Allende. He warned Chile was on the verge of a civil war. He led a military coup and suspended the constitution. He established a 17-year dictatorship. See, when these guys come to power, it's nearly impossible to get rid of them. And some, Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, we killed him, but he was in power for something like 40 years. And his country is still a basket case. And that was 10 years ago that I think we got rid of him. This country's a basket case. Your countries do not come out of this well. It's very, very difficult to come out of it. Erdogan of Turkey, 2016, he claimed that a coup attempt, which was real but possibly exploited and exaggerated, but he framed it as a widespread deep state conspiracy. Just something familiar about that. I don't know what it is. But he warned that enemies were infiltrating every level of society. God, that sounds familiar too. So he took the extraordinary measures of mass purges of the military, judiciary, academia, and he called a state of emergency. Mass purges of things, okay? The judiciary, academia. I mean, we have people here who talk about wanting to get rid of judges, and we have a Department of Justice who doesn't investigate when death threats are made against federal judges, which is a federal crime, punishable by starting at 10 years in prison. It's that serious? Anyway, I can't think who it was. Mass purges of the judiciary. I don't know. I don't know anything about that. Anyway, the outcome in Turkey was he consolidated executive power and he weakened opposition media. Well, sounds a little familiar too. But take this one, Francisco Franco of Spain. He came to power in 1936. He left power in 1975. That's 39 years. He claimed Spain was under imminent threat from communist, anarchists, sounds like criminals, roving the streets of Washington, D.C., and anti-Catholic forces. He warned that godless Marxists were destroying Spanish culture, faith, and unity. Oh, gosh, this is getting too close to home. I don't know. He took the measures of leading the military uprising and then used the Spanish Civil War as justification for mass repression. This guy was really bad. His dictatorship lasted until his death in 1975 with strict censorship, political executions, and suppression of regional autonomy. Yet he didn't promise any of those things when he came to power. None of these people promised any of these things when they came to power. They didn't say when they first came into power that that's what they wanted to do. Anyway, some of that sounds really familiar, right? I don't know what it is, but yeah, a little spooky, really, when you think about it. Anyway, the time is short in our country. The time is short. The time to wake up is now. The time to wake up and understand what's going on is now. Listen, the hour is very late. We've already started down this path. There's no question about that. We've already started down the path. And if it's not stopped now, it will end in America's becoming a dictatorship. And I read in the Atlantic a few months ago a woman who I think is from the Philippines, and she went through the whole thing with Ferdinand Marcos. And she was talking about how it starts with suppression of the media and the press and demonization of the press. And she said to the writer at the Atlantic, she said, look, every day from now on, you will have the most freedom that day that you will ever have if this isn't stopped. Because each and every succeeding day, freedom will be eroded a little bit. And what happened today is a big step in that erosion. If you're a Christian, pray along with me, pray along with all of us, pray for our country, pray for its people, pray that God will bless us and open our eyes to the truth. All right. Thanks for watching. Take care. Sorry it was so long. And I'll see you next time.